Welcome to another episode of the Dentology Podcast, where we discuss the business of dentistry. In this podcast series, we'll be discussing all the non-clinical aspects of dentistry, from goodwill values, finance, marketing, how to buy and sell a dental practice, mindset, through to where you can invest your money in team management issues. My name is Andy Acton, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens. Let's jump straight into it. I think speaking to Claire, it's one of those ones that the start point really does make sense in terms of all the things that she's gone on to do. Her time in the army was it was just such an interesting phase of her life.
But it gives a uniqueness, doesn't it? I thought it was very interesting on her view on the fact of everybody should do a stint in the army because of what it gives you.
Yes.
And I thought that was quite interesting, especially as, what the talk about is how do you focus young people?
Yeah.
But as you said, it gives a great ground in it and explains maybe that's the wrong word, but positions where she's been and what she's achieved and how she's like almost that laser focus.
Well, and I think that driven side of things that you refer to, the work she's doing with that Contemporary Hygienist model in terms of supporting hygienists and creating study clubs and an environment that positions hygiene, really at the centre of good patient care.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I say fascinating. Yet again, another one that as you slowly unpick, what's that thing from Shrek? People are like onions, and you slowly peel this back and there's more and more to people.
Yeah.
She was great.
But also her story around her attitude about never giving up and what she's prepared to do to achieve things. Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot more coming down the line from Claire.
No, definitely.
Really interesting lady. It was a great chat. So today we're joined by Claire Berry, and Claire is an award-winning hygienist and facial aesthetics specialist, founder of the Contemporary Hygienist. Interested in finding out more about that.
Yep, definitely.
A key opinion leader for Oral-B and Ivoclar Vivident, and she's also devoted to fitness and does mud runs, triathlons, and an Ironman, which would be surely an Iron Woman.
Woman.
Yeah. Welcome,
Steel
Claire.
woman.
Welcome, Claire. How are you doing?
Hi, nice to see you guys. Yeah, doing great.
Super.
Thank you for joining us.
So your pathway into dentistry is a real cracking story, but we'll get to that in a minute. You're incredibly fitness focused and obviously appreciate that link between how we perform physically and our overall well-being. So were you that kid at school? Were you that kid at school that was always really sporty and always doing the sporty stuff? Or was that something that you kind of grown into as you got older?
No, I definitely, I've always had it. It's always been like an integral part of me, really. I wouldn't say I was necessarily amazing at one sport and focused on that one thing. I very much was like kind of took a little bit of everything. So I wanted to play tennis, I wanted to play football, I wanted to do everything. And so I was kind of like one of those kids that was good at everything, could hold my own, but probably not a massive many. I'm sorry about the banging in the background.
It just made me laugh. It just made me laugh.
No, that's
For those of you listening, Claire is having some work done at home.
Podcast.
This episode has been sponsored by Claire's Local Builders.
We're going to run that thing Checkatrade. The thing that comes across the bottom.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or Screwfix or something.
Or perhaps that's Morse code for the builder's mobile phone number because he's trying to tout for business in a roundabout way.
Yeah, that's Morse code.
Yeah. That's it's just interesting that we were talking to Robbie Hughes in a different episode and listening to his start in life. He was a world champion kickboxer, but that really early days commitment to sport and that dedication to it has really carried through how he runs his life. So it's just interesting.
Sorry, say that again.
What was your favourite sport?
So if I was going to pick the sport that I focused on the most, it was definitely football. I played football till I was about 17. Played for started when I was 10, played for a local girls team. It was, we started it up. There wasn't many girls teams around. And grew up with them really throughout my early sort of childhood. And then when I was about 16, moved on to Doncaster Rovers until I was 17. Then I joined the army and played in the army as well. So I'd say, actually, I've just said a second ago, I didn't really focus on any. I definitely focused on football. That was my focus. So
Euro 22 then, you're really enjoying the footy at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, they're doing amazing, aren't they? The female.
I watched it last night. I'll tell you what, that cheeky third goal, those of you listeners who have not seen it, go and watch it. If it was it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if it was Messi or Ronaldo or something, it would be front page, it would be back page, one of the best goals ever scored.
But at the time we're recording
good.
this, at the point we're recording this, England have won their semi-final. So they're in the final of the Euros. Yeah. And my sincere hope is that by the time this actually gets published, we can say it has come home.
Yeah.
It truly has come home. Yeah. But no, they're doing really well.
What position did you play?
I was always, when I was younger, I sort of got taller than everyone else very quickly. So I was always in defence, but always wanted to go forward. So, but I'd say most of the time I was kind of in defence. I enjoy it. I really enjoyed that. It was good. I got injured and then didn't play for a long time. And that was around about the age where you sort of start going out with friends and everything like that. But it was get back up again once I joined the army. And I played for the dental corps once I was dental. So that was good. Now there's drilling.
Yeah.
That's very apt for dental.
I was going to say, it's a dental podcast. They're used to drilling. It's fine.
That was very strategically placed there, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you've mentioned being in the army and you were in the intelligence corps, and that was your sort of pathway through into dentistry. And there's so many questions. Did that
explain that?
I was going to say, did that? I suppose also from the army side of things, did that kind of take you down that pathway of that hardcore fitness? What did your career entail working in the army? Were there any hairy moments? Were there, how did that produce a segue into dentistry?
A lot of questions. I'm just trying to work out how you get an intelligence corps to get into dental. How does that sort of work?
I think it's over to you on that one.
Yeah, right, we're listening. I'm going to drink that. I'm going to drink the tea. So it's down to you now, Claire.
Well,
take as long as you like.
I was from a military background, so it was kind of like, in me to join the army, really. All my uncles, my dad, grandparents, grandma and granddad on both sides were in the army. So very, very military background. And I joined the TA when I was 17 as well. And when I went to uni, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to join the army anyway. So I'm just putting it off, signing on the dotted line and just, going for it. So I left uni and joined the army, and because I had A-levels, because I was at uni, I was kind of like sort of herded into intelligence corps, which was great. It's a fantastic career, but I just quickly realised it wasn't going to give me much when I left. I mean, you don't hear of many people saying they're in intelligence, especially females. So I wanted something that was going to give me a good career when I left, and I was always really interested in anatomy and science, and so I thought, I need a medical sort of direction. And to be honest, the dental hygienist course in the army is actually very sought after. It's a tri-service course and not many people get it, and so I went for it, got it first time, and that kind of, like, the rest is history. Became a hygienist and in a way kind of fell into it, I guess, but so passionate about it now. It was like it was always meant to be. So I'll always thank the person that introduced me. I mean, I think I did some work experience in the dental practice because I lived next door to a dental nurse in the block. And so I was like, this is the way I want to go. So luckily I had all the qualifications to get me on the course, and the rest.
Yeah. And then you switch out then? So were you like intelligence corps, and then when you got on the hygiene corps, you switch out of that and go into the dental corps? Is that how it's
not set in stone when you go onto the hygienist course that you're going to pass it. I think we started with like 12 or 15 people, and we actually qualified with only 5. So if you don't pass the course, you go back to your previous career. So you're never really fully fledged until you're kind of like qualified into it. But yeah, it's very much you switch from like intelligence to dental once you finish the course.
And you said that you were herded into the intelligence corps because I guess you got good academic results, and they thought, oh, she's bright, that would work in the intelligence corps. If that hadn't been the case and you hadn't gone into that corps and you'd have ended up in the mainstream army, do you think that would have had a bearing on whether you'd ever ever had access to make that flip over into dentistry?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you should say that, Chris. Actually, when I was in the TA, I was actually in the logistics corps. I was training to be an officer.
Oh, okay.
And so I had it in my head, like I was, I loved being at the in the TA and being in. I was training to be an officer at the time, and I decided very quickly I didn't want to be an officer in the army. My plan was to do so many years, let's say 5-6 years, and then try and go for a commission. Get like a little bit of life experience, a little bit of like I'm in the trenches with you guys at some point, and so I know as an officer, I know how it feels to be where you are. So that was always the plan, and I wanted to go into bomb disposal or something like that, something super cool.
Oh, wow.
But they were like, not many women go into that, and I thought, well, that's a challenge. That makes me want to do it even more. And they kind of like went in. They were like, you really, really should think about intelligence corps, and it actually on paper sounds very interesting. And there's some amazing things you can do in intelligence, but not everyone goes into languages, for example, and is able to do that. So, but then with dental, after doing the work experience, I thought, that's definitely a career. It's a lifelong career. It's always going to be needed.
Yeah.
And but if I had gone down that route of logistics, for example, I would have, with the qualifications, I could have still got onto the hygienist course. Yeah.
Right.
No.
Yeah. And so did you still have to do the basic training when you joined, before you joined the intelligence course?
Yeah. So everyone goes through basic training. I did mine in Winchester. So it was 12 weeks at the time. It's now 14 weeks. Hardcore. And it does set you up for like life skills, honestly. I'm never going to be late for anything. I will never. You always respect your elders, but you always respect the people in charge of you. Definitely gives you a self-discipline, the fitness side of things. I was already into that anyway.
Always look smart, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely sets you up for life, gives you some really great life skills. And I honestly, I think everyone needs to have a stint at doing something in the force.
I was going to say, what's your view? There's obviously the debate comes and goes about whether young people should go through some form of, basic training, national subscription, whatever you want to call it. Would you sign up to that, having been through that as a personal experience?
100%. It absolutely sets you up for life, like life skills, social skills, people skills. How to conduct yourself professionally, properly, discipline, self-discipline. The aspect of exercise and keeping yourself fit, putting other people before yourself, being part of a team, a massive team thing. I could never leave work early. Say, for example, put me in the dental situation. If I was a dental nurse, or if I was one of the dental team and I saw someone was going to leave work later than me, it's not in me to just walk away and leave them to crack on and then I get to leave early. That's fine. You're staying behind, and if we all leave a bit later, we leave together. We don't leave one at a time, and someone's okay and I'm okay, Jack. You have to work as a team, and we're all in it together. And sometimes, when things are hard, like when things are down, and you're all working as a team to get yourself back on track or back on time. Or when me and my dental nurse are running behind, and I'm like, come on, right, we're going to work together. We're going to get back on time again, and then by the end of the day, we finish on time. I'm like, we did it together. And I have I really love that kind of teamwork approach to it.
It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
So those core life skills that you've taken, that's all kind of the good stuff and the positive bit. There's quite a lot of talk as well about when people leave the armed forces and they then have to transition back into civilian life. How was that for you? Because I guess you weren't that kind of traditional soldier, but you were in the armed forces. So was that an easier transition compared to some other people, or was it still quite challenging?
They were definitely easier for me. Being dental core, you're kind of working 9 to 5, 5 days a week. You have, when you're dental core, I felt like I was having all the best bits of being in the army and then feeling like I was also just doing like a 9 to 5 job like you would be in the civilian industry. Yeah. I can understand how a lot of people struggle to transition from army into civilian life, because when you're living in the block with all your friends, and it is a different mentality between your co-workers when you're in the forces. You're like all in the trenches together almost, and then you come out and you haven't got that anymore, that camaraderie, that support. I think I can see how it is difficult for people, but me being kind of working in a 9 to 5 situation in the army and then leaving and doing a similar role, almost exactly the same role when I was out of the army, definitely made the transition easier for me. The thing that I struggled with is in the forces, I got, lots of time to do my treatments. We would give TPs away if someone wasn't. So my core role was really to get people physically and oral health fit for deployment. So, for example, one of the places I worked, it was a Scottish battalion. They were going to Afghanistan. So we were trying to get them fit. We were doing DNA testing on them so that when they went out, they were, we had, their information, but then also that they were medically fit to deploy from an oral health perspective. Right. And so I always remember one guy who just wasn't brushing his teeth. And so I got him back every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning to be like, you have to get, you have to do this. It's not about you anymore. It's about you. Right. If you're out in the sticks and you get toothache, you're not able to perform at your best, and then people have to get you back to camp, and that's dangerous. You have to look after yourself, because that's also helping you look after your teammates. So and so I could do things like that when I was in the army, and then you get out of the army and then people are paying for your services. My first patient when I left the army and I came into civil, she was a 92-year-old woman, and you can imagine, bless her, she was lovely.
Wow.
But I was like, I usually treat fit, healthy, 18 to 65-year-olds. Like I don't treat. It was a bit of an eye opener, and the length of.
And Claire, did you, in your time, did you go to different places? I mean, you said you're wherever it is, the Scottish Red. So, did you go over seas, to Afghanistan or Iraq or any place?
No.
Like that?
So when I beforehand, I was meant to go to Iraq in 2005. No, sorry, 2007. But I got onto the hygienist course, and so I couldn't go because otherwise I'd have spent too long away from, because obviously the hygienist course was a few years. So. No, I didn't end up going in the end. So I did 7 years of service, and I have no medals to show for it. A hygienist, you were no longer deployable because your job was to get people ready to go.
Oh, is that? Because I was wondering whether they deployed you, so they didn't. So once you're a hygienist, you stay in the UK.
Yeah, dental nurses, dentists, they would go over, but dental hygienists, no. So I knew once.
Why is that? That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's they don't actually have hygienists in the Army and the RAF now, and they have locums, but I think the Navy still have a couple that go onto the ships. So it's not even a role that you can do now. But I think the reason being is that a dentist could do kind of the things that I would be doing, and then it would be just sending another body over there. So our role was kind of primarily getting people prepared and keeping them fit whilst they were at home.
And your training, Claire, obviously the training program you went through is quite different to the traditional training that hygienists would have gone through. Are you, now you're qualified and you obviously interact with lots of other hygienists, how do you behave in terms of how you deliver treatment based on the original training compared to those that were trained in a more traditional setting? I'm not saying better or worse. Is it just different? Do you go about your work in a different way?
Interesting question.
Yeah, no.
It's
exactly the same. So the course we did in the Army, even though we qualified, that was a boring answer, wasn't it? Even though
it was the same. Yeah, we use a bayonet to clear the top. That would have been much more interesting.
We don't do anything differently. Unfortunately, that was the boring answer. It's exactly the same. So the course we did was the same as some of the routes that the hygienists. We did our course through. We qualified through Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh, and we had examiners come down, and we did all the same exams, all the same papers. So it was exactly the same. We did the same thing.
Fine. And so rolling forward and bringing us up to date, you now work in a beautiful private practice in the north of England, in Leeds. I think you're there, is it 3-4 days
4 days a week?
like that,
well, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So some weeks we have to open Saturdays to deal with the amount of patients. Oh, I don't know what that was. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
we did. Yeah, it sounded like the gong. It sounded like the lunch gong went off. But alongside that, you also have co-founded the Contemporary Hygienist, which is a nationwide study club, which I find fascinating. What was the driver behind that? Is it, in your opinion, an underserved segment of dentistry? What was the thought process behind creating that?
Yeah, so it started in 2018, 2019. Me and a girl called Faye Donald. She works quite close to me in Leeds as well, Leeds and York. We just felt like we wanted to support hygienists in our area, really. So it was a Leeds-based thing initially, and we would have them come down to my practice at Yorkshire Dental Suite, and then we'd do an evening, put some food on. It was very. We do a little bit of CPD, do some topics that we thought were relevant for them, and then it was kind of like having a platform for people to discuss their problems or their wins, get people talking and get people together. The thing with being a hygienist, it's quite an isolated role, and so we just wanted to bring it together. And then that we very quickly realised that it was just something that people really, really wanted and really needed, especially when they were newly qualified. And we thought, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't just have it for people in Leeds, if we then, spread out to like Manchester and go to other places as well. And we talked about it all the way through lockdown. Should we bring something that's a bit more nationwide? And then in 2020, this year, so January this year, we were like, right, we're just going to do it. And we did one in Manchester, we did one in London, Birmingham. It's sponsored by Oral-B and EMS, and so it's growing and growing. We've now got an online platform where we offer online CPD through Dentistry CPD. So we work with them for that, and we put on their ebooks and templates for like referral forms and everything like that as well. So just offering support and I guess a platform for people to learn more and get together as a community and just not feel as isolated.
I think that thing to be able to share, I think it was quite interesting to share the wins, but also maybe the not so wins in a confidential environment with other people who probably, don't worry, that happens.
It's amazing. Like, we say to them all, it's a safe space. You can guarantee it's happened to us all. And people who do ask the questions, everyone's like, yeah, I felt like that as well. But you would never necessarily reach out and let people know that on an open platform like Facebook or something like that. And if you don't,
and I think that's a real shame and a flaw. The aircraft industry. There's a book, Black Box Thinking, by Matthew Syed, and it talks about the aircraft industry, and the reason that there's so few serious catastrophes in the airline industry now is because they share all their data and information. So if ever there's a black box incident, that failure of whatever sort gets shared across the whole industry, so everybody can learn in real time, so nobody makes the same mistake again. Which, if you then extend that principle out to what you were just saying, it's a shame that somebody can't have a failure or something go wrong in a clinical situation and not have the safe environment to share that, so that others don't make the same mistake for fear of being vilified or,
I think blame. I think we live in such a blame culture.
Reported to the GDC or whatever else it might be. Yeah, and it's a shame that you end up having to have kind of these micro environments where people feel comfortable to have those conversations.
And then also as well with social media, we only ever see people's like wins on there. You only see people's best bits. So it's very easy to think, oh gosh, I'm not successful because I'm not, got all these followers. Can you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the motorbike,
I think social media has definitely made people feel like they're not either successful or they're not doing, if I'm not doing the same thing as them, then am I even worthy or good enough? And so we wanted people to sort of see that everyone is doing the same things, and that when we see people's best bits, they've still got their failures and the things that that they're struggling with and they're worrying about as well. So we're all the same.
I think that's hygiene is so important. I think it's the future. You think when you look at delivery dentistry, I think the combination of hygienists, therapists, and dentists there's got to be way more use of hygienists and therapists to be able to deliver. I just think it's
well, I think we were saying that just last week the NHS reforms came in, and or the start of the NHS reforms, and they've said that now therapists will be able to open treatment for patients, whereas before it had to be opened by the dentist, but then a therapist or a hygienist could then deliver the treatment. The therapist can actually open treatment. And I think for me that kind of just cracks the door open in terms of where it could go in all dental care professionals playing a larger role in terms of delivering that care. Has the extent of what you do and how hygienists are treated in a wider dental practice environment changed in your experience over the years?
Has that improved?
Oh, definitely. I think it's improved for patients as well. I think patients are really starting to understand what hygiene. I think very much when I first qualified, I don't think a lot of people knew what a hygienist was and what a hygienist did, including probably some of the dentists as well. Like what we could offer to our full scope. The scope of practice for a 1950s hygienist physically said scale and polish, and that was about it. And now, we've got all these different things that we can do. So I think it's definitely within the industry, people starting to realize the potential of hygiene and therapy. And then patients as well, they're starting to be like, oh, okay, so the hygienist does that and the dentist does that. And I think they still need to learn a little bit more about what therapists can do. But in terms of a hygienist, I think we're definitely being more utilized and more valued in the team. There's definitely feels like there's a big shift coming, especially with what you just mentioned there about therapists too. And sort of having, if this needs to be done, you go to this clinician. If this needs to be done, you go to this clinician. And we're very much being used now a lot like that for like the oral health side of things. In fact, at the practice I work at, we decided we weren't going to call it a scale and polish anymore. It's no longer called a clean. You're not allowed to say those words because that's really, it's directing patients to think that's what we do. We scale and we polish, and we call it oral health optimization because it's all about optimizing health, ready for either, optimization before restoration, optimization before cosmetic. It means
change your words, change your focus.
Change your words, change your mindset, and how we perceive what my job role is. And so when we started talking like that as a practice, they started saying, oh my God, I don't want to do composite bonding or veneers without, oral health being optimized first, because actually my results are going to be aesthetically better. They're going to last longer, and health should always come first anyway, as we all believe. And then as well, on the back end of that, as a byproduct, but not, as a fourth thought, it actually is more profitable, because now you're seeing a hygienist numerous times before you see the dentist for your treatment that you're desperately wanting to have. And ethically, it's going to be done on a healthy platform, as opposed to just putting it into any sort of foundation.
Do you remember that guy who years ago we occasionally do lectures about business performance and stuff, and I still remember that dentist who said that his line is the fact of, would you build a house on dodgy foundations? And he said, basically that's what you need to have. You need to have a properly good oral health before you even start doing any work. And I think that's so true, isn't it? And I think maybe you're right that people are understanding that that's more important, and dentists are now realizing that actually you guys are useful.
I think what's really insightful is that it wasn't led by a piece of technology. I know you do a lot of work with EMS on the guided biofilm therapy, but all you effectively did here was just change the words and the language of how your same service was perceived, and it suddenly had completely elevated status. It became significant in the delivery of their wider treatment and their ongoing oral health, just by tinkering with the words of how you present it. I always find that fascinating, how you can just describe something in a different way and it gets received in such a different
gourmet burger is a burger.
Yeah, it smells so much better. I mean, it changed the whole pathway of patients moving through the practice as well. So what it turned into is every single person that has a consultation, their next step is see me, and sometimes it's see me numerous times before they move on and have the treatment. Like I say, it's optimization before restoration, which then meant I went from that practice. I was working there 2 days a month. It went from 2 days a month to, I could work there 6-7 days a week and I'd still have enough patients to keep me busy. I'm there 4 or 5 days a week. And so, and we're to capacity. I'm fully booked now till November. And that's not great for business, as you probably can imagine. But because the pathway just turned into, actually, when I do my treatments, I actually had a patient yesterday who had his consultation in March, who was seeing me because he can't move on to the next stage until, and I saw him yesterday and I was like, wow, I'm so sorry you had to wait so long to see me. But he was like, oh, no. I know I need to have this sorted out first because I want my treatment to last, because the conversation at the consultation was done properly, that the patient saw the importance of my role before he would move on to the next bits. And so he was like, well, of course I want to stay at the practice. Technically, he could have gone elsewhere and got it done quicker. But he was like, no, I want to go to the practice that puts that ahead of anything else, because if I'm paying all this money, I want it to last and I want it to look the best it could look. And actually I should be putting health first. I'm in this position because I didn't. And so I want to change that.
Yeah. But also how elevating for you to be presented in a way where you've got patients who are like, well, I'm not going anywhere near a dentist until I get my hygiene optimized. Because I'm sure there have been times when people haven't been particularly complimentary about within a dental practice environment. It's kind of a lower level treatment, but it sounds from what you just described that it's absolutely it's right up there with what the dentist is going to be doing. It's a different dental care.
It's almost like having your MRI scan before you have a diagnosis or something. You wouldn't go in for a cardio and the bloke would say, I'll tell you what, hop on the table and we'll have a go and see what happens. They'd want to do something else. And it must be, as you were saying, it must be interesting. So I bet your experience is not the most common experience. The most common experience is that they're not presented in that way. And I'm assuming that's changing, but I
think it's changing. Me and Faye, actually, when we developed Contemporary Hygienist, we quickly went on to realise that we're trying to get clinicians to realise their potential, realise their worth, and be more autonomous, be business people as hygienists, so I can micro business within a business if they're self-employed. So we were very much working with people like that, and then we realised actually, we're preaching to the converted sometimes when we're talking to hygienists and therapists. So we were like, we need to get into the practices and change the practices, because this idea of optimization before restoration and oral health optimization as a treatment concept needs to be across the board. Because if we were all working like that, then you're putting the hygienist and the therapist, like giving it more gravitas and giving it the value it deserves. And with that as well comes, a business model which works, ethical profitization, is that a word? But that's it works in that way.
Yeah.
So we were like, we need to get into the practices. So we developed like a bit of a consultancy element to it as well, and we go into practices and teach the whole team. So it's not about teaching the hygiene have this word, these words and what it means. Is teaching the referring clinicians how to talk about the hygiene department and the oral health department, and the experts, which are hygienists and therapists, because that's what we are. We're experts in oral health. And so if we're talked about in that way, then you can also, if you're charging £40 for a hygiene appointment, I pay more than that for my haircut, And so if you're charging £40 for a hygiene appointment, you're putting it on a level in a patient's mind with like a haircut or a trim. That's a trim, and that's not a health treatment then, is it? I don't go see my physio and give her £20 for an hour's treatment. You go in there and you're going, this is something that's going to benefit my health. And so if you're talking about it in the right way, you can charge the amount that puts value on that appointment being a health appointment, And
I don't think there's anything embarrassing about that. I mean, it's obviously worked incredibly well for Yorkshire Dental Suite, but it is a business, and as a business, it's okay to make profit. And like you say, it absolutely has to be done ethically and patient-centered to make sure that it's what they need. But if, as a product of that, you've gone from doing 2 days a month to 6 days a week, if you wanted to, that's a success on every level. And like you said, in many ways, the clinicians that you're talking to already get it. It's how you get it into the wider dental community to understand that this is actually good for business as well. You would hope it would always be a given. It has to be good for the patient. But once you kind of step back from that, there is a business dynamic here that means it is very good.
I struggle to talk about money when it comes to with healthcare, because I think it should always be about the patient. And that's what's good about this, is that it is actually about the patient. It's putting the patient first, making the treatment, better, longer lasting, and underlying that, you've got health, which we know oral health, systemic health are so closely linked. So you're not only dealing with someone's mouth, you're actually potentially helping them to stay systemically healthy as well. I've looked at, as I like fitness. And so I've done a little bit of research into, the whole marginal gains. And if there's any, with elite professionals and elite sports people and athletics, it's all about marginal gains. And if there's any inflammation anywhere in the body, it can impact their overall, health and fitness. And so we want to lower the amount of inflammation in the body. Well, a common cause of inflammation, a chronic inflammation in anyone's body, is gum disease. So we can eliminate, that's something we can stabilize. It's something we can prevent. And so, we're starting to see football teams put more emphasis on oral health care and go and see their dentist, teams having, dental teams that work with them, and the Commonwealth Games, you've got a dental team now at the Commonwealth Games. Faye actually is working at the Commonwealth Games at the minute, and so they've got a hygienist that every single athlete needs to go and see a hygienist about their oral health fit. It's interesting.
It's servicing a car, isn't it? It's protecting your investment. I always think people don't realise how valuable their teeth are until they lose them. And then they have to pay thousands to get them replaced. And if you were able to say to them, actually, you've got, you could have £100,000 worth of teeth here. How much would you spend to make sure you kept your £100,000 worth of teeth? But somehow, because we're born with them, we're like, they're just teeth. We
always feel invincible. When in our 20s, we're invincible. No one goes to the dentist in the 20s. You leave home at 18, go to university, and the next your dentist is when you're 35 and tooth in pain, So I think flipping it, like you said there, Chris, is quite interesting, because actually then working with a hygienist every so many months, for lifelong care, because I always call it lifelong care. Everyone needs to see a hygienist. If you're healthy or if you're not, you need to have lifelong care with a hygienist. We're there to prevent. The thing with oral health is that things can change and can go downhill very quickly. And it's not that we don't trust patients to look after their mouth. It's that there's so many nooks and crannies they can't reach, that we're here to reach those nooks and crannies and work with them. And so it's an investment, actually. So if your mouth was worth £100,000 worth of treatment, if you look at implants down the line, actually it's an investment to maintain what you've got.
It's almost It's almost like creation of a ready reckoner, isn't it? That sort of says, like, based on this is what will happen, and if you don't do this, this is on average you'll end up paying this amount of money to repair and replace, rather than spending this. I mean, you probably can't do it, but it's sort of trying to evidence to people, look, guys, invest now because you're going to save in the future.
Amount of people
And what's
the amount of people that I see down the line, and they say, "Oh, I wish I met you 20 years earlier or 10 years earlier." Hindsight's an amazing thing.
It is. And you're obviously heavily connected to the profession through your KOL work with Oral-B and EMS. What does the future, like the long running future, look like for hygiene in terms of sort of long term dental care? Are we going to see changes coming in the years ahead of how hygienists feature in dental practices beyond the work that you just talked about now?
I think it's going to become commonplace to see hygiene clinics on the streets like you do dental clinics. I think that's going to become commonplace. And Andy, as you know, I think I reached out to you not long ago because I was like,
you did, yeah.
We need to get the banks to change their stance.
Yeah, well, I think we had that conversation as well about the difference between how banks treat dentists compared to treating
with
hygienists.
The contemporary hygienist thing. I wonder whether there's some element of having a conversation with one of the banks. I'm sort of just spitballing, really, having a conversation with one of the banks that says, look, guys, really, there's a almost like a working group. I don't know quite what, there's almost like this community, and how we could persuade them to be more generous to hygienists, because actually financially it does work. We know that it financially works. It's just that their policies aren't written to accept it. So we just need to change the policy. Anyway,
I mean, there are some hygienists that own dental practices, but I agree. I don't think we're there yet, but I think there will be hygiene-led retail outlets that just focus on oral optimization.
We coined that because we just wanted to get away from the whole scale and polish idea. We love that phrase as well, trying to roll that out a little bit. But I think it's going to become commonplace, and I think it needs to be, because I think it gives access to care to the public. It's a much easier access to care. We've seen a lot of patients come and see us that won't go to a dental practice because of fear, and it's a really good gateway into sort of getting them treatment that they need, and some people just want to continue seeing a hygienist, be it cosmetic, because they want that level. I always say give them what they want whilst telling them what they need, until what they need becomes what they want. So we have a lot of patients that come initially to see me.
That's nice.
They initially see me for stain removal, and then they
Well, we're building that one. Just
and they continue to see me for lifelong care, because then once you start talking about health and everything like that, they're like, oh, actually, as a byproduct, it looks better. But actually, now I'm seeing you for a health benefit as opposed to the cosmetic. And as a byproduct of the health benefit, there is a nice looking, fresh looking smile at the end of it, and the benefit in the health. So yeah.
You're a very dogged, determined type person, aren't you? Just the things you've done, the things you want to do, and just talking to you today. You also did a Ironman challenge as well, but you said
Steel Woman.
Yeah, but you said you did it without much training. So what was the logic and the thinking behind that? Because that sounds quite challenging.
Did it go well?
If that's
it was the way you went. Oh yeah.
Was this the exuberance of youth just kind of spilling over?
It wasn't that long ago. It was actually 2017. Basically, I think again it all comes back to the army, the growing up interested in sports. One thing you have to realise with the army comes, aspiration, challenge. When I actually left the army and became a hygienist in Civvy Street, I realised very quickly there was no promotion. There was no where's the pay rise? Where's the promotion? Where's the courses that get me that next level? And I wasn't there anymore. So I had to create that for myself, and that's when I started, doing more courses. When I went into aesthetics, it was because I wanted to create a business for myself. I realized that if I could run an aesthetics business, then why don't I run a dental hygiene business? Because I'm a micro business within a business. That then led on to articles. It led on to, I'm now on the editorial board for some of FMC's publications. It led to KOL work with Oral-B, EMS, training clinicians. But I also love a challenge as well. So I started doing like 10Ks, half marathons. It always leads on to more. Like there's that drive, like I want to do more. Like once I've conquered that, I want more. And you've always got to have that something to work towards. So after half marathon came marathon, after marathon came, okay, triathlon. And then I was like, well, ultimately, next thing is it was actually a half Ironman. I can't claim the Ironman status, but yeah, half Ironman. And
we're still impressed. We're still impressed, honestly.
But during like the time of like doing that, I was doing so many other things with my work that, you have to almost give so much time to be able to train for an Ironman. So there's 3 elements. So for those that don't know, it's you swim, you cycle, and then you run. And a half Ironman is quite lengthy. It's a lengthy race. It's very long, and it finishes with a half marathon. I couldn't commit the time to the training, and so but the thing is, I never backed out of it. And the reason for that is, if I do anything, I will always finish it. And experience has taught me that. Everything I've ever done, I've always got to the end. It might not have always been easy, but I've always got to the end. And so from experience, I know I can do anything I put my mind towards, and I'll always finish it. I might not be the first, but I know I'll never be the last. And so when I did it, I thought, you know what? All it is a swim, it's a bike, and it's a run. And as long as I keep moving forward, then I can do it. And so I literally got through it through mental, like just that, put one foot in front of another, and you're not going backwards,
But whilst the experience gives you that ability to complete it, where does that never give up attitude come from? Because at some point you need to start building that experience. You said you did I don't know, what was it, a park run, mud run, half marathon, half Ironman. Where does that kind of attitude, that kind of real doggedness come from to just want more? Did that get instilled in you?
Definitely. I think as well, my dad, he was in the army, he ran for the combined services, he was a long distance runner. I think there was a little bit of like, I'm not saying daddy issues, but I wanted to always impress my dad. So I would always be like, look what I've done now, look what I've done now. And then when you're in the forces, I was with an infantry battalion, and we'd have to get up at 6 a.m. on a Friday, and it was like a 6-mile run, and you're running with like infantry soldiers. Like I wasn't running with them because I was not as fast as them, but I was never the last, and you always try your hardest. That's just a really big thing for me. Just always try your hardest, and it's just that desire to always find out what I'm capable of, So once I knew I was...
So do you do lots of adrenaline stuff then, like climbing mountains?
I've climbed mountains, I've jumped out of planes. Yeah, I guess there's an element of that as well. I never really thought about it in that capacity, but there's definitely this element of, I like to say I like to say when I've done something, I've achieved that, and I love the fact that I've done some things that other people wouldn't do. I don't know. That's definitely maybe a military thing. I actually like the fact that I've been in the military, and people are like shocked that I've done that. And it's different. And I like the fact that I can say I've done a half Ironman, and people are like, "Oh gosh, wow, you did that." It's nice to.
So what's next? What's next on your? Is it a full Ironman?
Well, it was going to be a full Ironman.
Are you thinking of something else?
The half Ironman, broke me a little bit. I'm not sure. Met the challenge. So I don't think I'd do a full Ironman, because I think it'd be a bit dangerous to try and do those kinds of distances without being able to commit the time to the training. I think Ironman was
the training,
what I would be capable of without dedicating the time to the training, because it is taxing on the body. There's a reason why people.
So do you choose something, or do you suddenly think, I'll tell you what, I'm going to climb Ben Nevis or Snowdonia or up the reverse side or whatever it is? Do you sort of plan something, or is it something that you'll be thinking, hello, that's the one? You'll see something. Is it sort
maybe
of that
a
how
little bit
it works?
more ad hoc, like you just said there, the second one? Like I'll see something and go, oh, I fancy that, and I'll ring like a friend who I know would actually do it, or my other half, and I'll be like, we're going to do this. I really fancy this. Let's do it. And that's probably why I end up doing something with no training, because I just fancy it. It looks good. I know I'll finish it because I'll finish. I plan to finish everything I start. So I know that if I was at the bottom of the mountain, I'd be at the top. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Everest will be a bit trickier than most, but I know I'll get to the top if I'm at the bottom of it. So on the day, I'll finish it. But yeah, that's probably why no training goes into it. It's not something I go, I'm going to train for that and then I'm going to do it. I just sign up.
I think it's a real mixture of your experience, confidence, and self-visualization.
The
isn't
confidence is a
You've got a lot of confidence because of the things you've done. You've done things that have gone well, which gives you the experience and that confidence link. But also, you constantly talk in a future of yourself of these things that I'm going to achieve, and I don't know what they are yet, but I'm going to keep achieving things, and they'll come at different times in different ways.
I'm intrigued what your holidays are like.
Oh gosh, yeah. No.
Do you go on a holiday? Do you go on holiday and relax? As in, do you sit on a sun lounge in the sun, or are you a bit like, oh, I've done that for 15 minutes, I need to go and do something else? I mean, what's your holiday like? What's a typical Claire holiday?
We're building the extension, obviously, with COVID and everything. So next year, I'm definitely having one. I definitely go running. I go running in the morning when I do that, because then I can relax the rest of the day, and it's a time for me to actually read a book. So I really like reading self-help stuff, and so I don't get a lot of time for that. And I love the fact the last holiday I went on was like 2019. I went on a long weekend, so that was the last holiday, and I read a book in 4 days, and that was nice.
Good. We always finish up in the same way. We always ask our guests the same two questions, and the first one we always ask is, if you could be the fly on the wall with somebody in a certain situation, what would that be? Where would you be, and who would you be with?
I thought about this long and hard, and I really would love to be able to say something profound, like some sort of philosophy. It's amazing.
No, we've had lots of nonsense. Honestly, go with what feels comfortable.
One that kept coming back to my head was I'd love to be on the fly on the wall with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, not through like the stuff that's not so nice, just to see if it really was a mega pint of wine. What is a mega pint of wine? So probably Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. So yeah, and I kept going back.
Wow, we definitely haven't had that one.
Just see what did happen there, both of them. It was very much through that whole situation. It was like, which one of them is saying the true account? So yeah, and a mega pint of wine. What does that look like?
I think what's fascinating in those situations always is that there was only one truth. There was one reality of what actually happened in that moment, but the way that people describe it from their own point of view is so markedly different. And they're both describing a single event, and you're like, well, which one of you is right? Because it only happened, one thing happened. So what version of it was it?
I'm just now thinking about, what is a mega pint of wine? What is a mega pint of wine? Is that like a bottle of wine in that big glass that they used to have?
really big one.
Really big glass. So is that like a mega pint? Because that would be more than a pint, wouldn't it?
I just want to know whether...
I think it's fair to say that bad things fall out the back of mega pints of wine. I think we know that.
Not a good plan. Not a good plan.
No.
Anyway, moving on.
And our last question is, if you could meet somebody, you were given the opportunity to meet somebody and sit down and have a mega pint of wine with somebody, who would you?
Living or dead?
Who would you sit down with?
Do you know what? I'd actually sit down with Bear Grylls, but I'm not sure it'd be a mega pint of wine. It might be a mega pint of like grubs or something, which would be the worry. But Bear Grylls. He'd be an interesting character, wouldn't he? Yeah.
He would. Yeah. He would. I've started watching some of the In the Wild stuff. I watched the episode with Barack Obama again recently, and it's almost a little bit like a live podcast in the conversations they have and the things he puts people through. But he really is a good guy. I think he's a really interesting guy.
Definitely. He's an interesting guy, and I think he can teach a few skills. So no, he'd be good. The only thing would be if you end up eating grubs at the end of it, because people don't seem to say no to him. I'm not sure I could do it.
It's quite interesting, isn't it, on that? And I suppose you get back to personality. There was a bloke who is his name Ray Mears?
Oh
yeah. And you think you remember Ray Mears did all the same sort of stuff, but he's got nowhere near the profile of Bear Grylls.
No,
and that must just be about promotional person. I just thought it was fascinating. I used to love watching that thing, how to cook a meal in the middle of Scotland or something. Using your toenails to light fires.
But going back to what you were saying earlier, Claire, about the things you learnt by going into the army in that basic training, I think a lot of the things that Bear Grylls doing, he's got that outdoor adventure thing. You've probably seen it at the NEC at Birmingham, where anybody can go, but young kids tend to go. And I know that he's doing a veterinary fitness thing, where lots of vets now get involved in running fitness camps and fitness events for people. So he's doing loads of good things and tapping into elements of society which you don't obviously think about. So I think he would be great. But I agree, you don't want to be drinking blood from a dead badger, do you? That's part of your date.
That's probably what I think you would be doing with him.
No. Claire, we appreciate your time. We know you've got a lot going on with work and builders and everything else, so it's been fabulous to spend time and catch up with you. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
It's been brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing, and also follow us on Instagram.